Hello and welcome to episode 13 of Salad Cast. We're back again. It's been 4 games since the last podcast. Last podcast we did was when the kind of unveiling of Gavin Cameron as our Shrewsbury Town manager. And yeah, it's been an interesting 4 games, Chris. Welcome back on the podcast. How you doing?
Good, Ollie, thanks. And yeah, looking forward to tonight. As you say, an interesting 4 games. We seem to have got better slowly but surely, game on game. And obviously, we'll get later to the Swindon game. And I think we were all almost a little bit giddy after that one yesterday. So yeah, looking forward to chatting about it today.
Cool. Thanks. Good to have you on. You've got the full gang on. And Dan, how you doing?
I'm good. Ollie, what a difference a week makes, eh? I'd even say I'm very good, which is like unheard of territory almost, isn't it? So yeah, fantastic stuff.
Cool. And yeah, welcome on the podcast, Mike. An interesting week from the Price family perspective.
Yeah. Before we get onto the games, we've had a mad week because we had a Tuesday night game against Barrow, didn't we? After which there was the club sort of put out that there was a medical emergency afterwards, and a fan had suffered a cardiac arrest, and that was my father-in-law, Bob Green. So we've had a bit of a crazy week after that. But I just wanted to take the opportunity at the top of the show before we get to do much of the football to say how amazing the response of the football club was on that. I think they put out the details of it with Bob. He got back to his car after the match, and a lot of people have said it was the surprise of a win that gave him a heart attack, which he was laughing about when we told him that earlier on. But yeah, he got back to his car, suffered a cardiac arrest immediately when he got in the car. His brother-in-law, who was with him, went and notified the stand manager around by the family stand, a guy called Brian Parry, I think his name is. And within 30 seconds of notifying him, there were stewards over there. They were getting him on the floor. He was in the recovery position. And within 3 minutes, they'd started CPR. He'd had 2 defib shocks from the defibs that are dotted all around the stadium. Then he was in an ambulance. He had another shock, and they managed to get his heart going again. That's all that is to say. We saw him today, and he's remarkably fine. He's completely back with it. He's got to have a few more tests, and he might have a pacemaker. But the response of the club being so quick means that he's here today. If that had happened anywhere else, the West Mids Ambulance Service told us, and a few of the other people involved said if it had happened anywhere else, if he'd have been as far as Lidl, if he'd have been at home, it just wouldn't have made it for the severity of the cardiac arrest he suffered. So being a Shrewsbury Town fan saved his life, and I just want to sort of pay credit to the club. They get a lot of shit for a lot of things, but I just think on this occasion it just goes to show how good an operation they're running there on the supporter safety side of it, how well organised they are. How responsive, and the aftercare has been fantastic as well. They've been checking in, they've been keeping in touch. They've done welfare checks on all the staff that have been involved. There's a young lad from the outsourced security company called Romeo who was involved, only a 20-year-old lad, was straight on the scene. So just fantastic work by the club, and I think it puts a lot of stuff in perspective about football. And I think we can be quite miserable about the club, but I've seen firsthand what they can do for their supporters. And it's world class, basically. It's life saving. So well done. I think they're fantastic. You're going to struggle to get any negativity out of me, sadly, because I just so grateful for them. Yeah, it's been amazing.
Just going to say there, then, Mike, that one line. Not that Shrewsbury Town saved his life, well, that's clearly true. But if it has been as far away as Lidl, he might not have made it. And anyone who knows the Meadow knows that really is not far away.
No, it's
unbelievable.
Yeah, it's mad. And ironically, well, I don't know, ironically is the right word, but Bob was the head gateman at the club for almost 30 years before he gave it up about 6 or 7 years ago. So he put a lot of service into that football club and sort of has been rewarded for his trouble with sort of a life-saving intervention. So some people on the podcast who maybe have worked stewards, gateman, just been around the club a long time might know Bob. So, he's had a lot of well wishes, and we're just praying for a full recovery for him. But I just wanted to put it out there that, you're very safe if you're at the football ground. They are very well organised on that sort of things. And credit to Dave, the safety guy, and all the team there. They were fantastic.
It's brilliant to hear, Mike. There's that famous Bill Shankly quote, isn't there, that football's more important than life and death, but it's really not. And that's for the stuff that really matters. There's Shrewsbury Town coming through. So yeah, brilliant to hear, and yeah, it's great to hear you. Great to hear you talk us through that as well. It's been. I'm sure a lot of fans have been wondering how he's doing, so I'm sure that'll be appreciated. There's been a lot of comments on social media about that, so really good to hear that he's doing well. And yeah, thanks for updating.
Yeah, well, we went and saw him today, and all he wanted to know about was the Swindon match because he was so buzzing about the result, and he couldn't believe he'd missed it. He was gutted. I said it was best game of the season by a mile, and you didn't see it, but he was really chuffed about it. So he's hoping for more again on Tuesday. He said they're obviously doing it for me now. They've got extra thing to play for. So yeah, he's still in good spirits. Bless him.
No, that's great. It's great to hear, Mike. Yeah, because you left the ground and you saw the story kind of go online, didn't you? But you didn't realise it was connected to you. It was quite imagine that was quite surreal as well.
Yeah, well, we must have walked past it on the way to our car, and then on the way home, my wife rang me because her mum had already found out. So we knew pretty quickly. But yeah, amazingly, like the landlord of the Prince of Wales is a paramedic, and he was the guy that took him to the hospital. So, I'll be going in there and buying lots of pints to pay him back as well. So there's lots of, Shrewsbury's a very small town. You meet people and they know people. And, even the landlord of me local was taking my father-in-law to the hospital when he had a heart attack. So, yeah, really good. Again, Shrewsbury's a fantastic family community club, isn't it? So, feather in the cap, yeah.
And we do also hear a lot of stories about bang average people doing bang average things. This is an example of lots of normal people doing brilliant things, isn't it?
World class, yeah. Like industry leading response time. I think it's it should not be brushed under the carpet. He's a very lucky man to be where he was around the people that he was at the time.
No, it's great to hear he's doing well, and I'm sure all Shrewsbury Town fans wish him a great recovery, and hopefully he can enjoy the rest of the season. Hopefully, more wins to come as well. And I think as a podcast, even from the start, we've always tried to be fair. So I think we try to be fair in our criticism, but I think we're also fair in our praise. And it's fantastic to hear that there are some really good people, and yes, on the results on the pitch have been poor. We've always tried to promote the foundation, and the good thing the clubs does, and obviously good people have done some good things. So that's fantastic to hear. So
even to name some more names, Liam has been in touch. Jane Bebb was very involved with it, was down there looking after Bob and stuff. So even the chairman, because they know each other from when they were younger, Bob and the chairman, was sort of saying, I'm sure I know who that was. So, right to the top, and we don't give the chairman much credit, but even he was sort of, asking after him and sending his regards. So, well done.
Yeah.
We'll leave it there. That's enough, I think. Yeah. Enough positivity.
No, that's
until we get to the football.
Until we get to the football. So, that's the intro, and let's jump into the games. So the first game of the Cowan era, I always want to say like Cowan Edwards and and Jamie, I can't think of his surname now.
Haynes. Poor old Jamie, give him his credit, Ollie.
He gets forgetting all the time. So the Barnet came in, so they took over on the Thursday. We had the game on the Saturday. The Barnet game started, so Barnet were coming in, they won something like 4 in 6 games, and they're coming on a real good run of form after obviously they lost to us early in the season. And then picking up some good results, and it was interesting. I thought we were WhatsApping in our group, and I was chatting to Chris and Mike at half time of this Barry game. And for me, it was really clear that for me from the outset there was like 2 things were clear. Is one, Gavin Cowan did not want to lose his first football match in the EFL, and secondly, they had implemented some ideas. So balls into channels, the strikers split quite wide. Obviously, we come on to the team selection in a minute. But it was a very hard-fought point, and there was a lot of anger in Block 17. And me and Mike were both a bit perplexed. I think, is that fair to say, Mike? After the game, because I thought, it was so important. I thought that they made a marker as a management team, and they just didn't want to lose.
Yeah, I think to me it seemed like it just massively simplified everything. He'd been in a day and a half, I think, at that point before the match. I think he'd come in and he'd sort of stripped it. Or I sort of described it to people. He's boiled football right down to its essential elements. It was number 1, like you say, don't lose. Number 2, don't concede. And then if we managed to nick something, that would be great. And that's how they played it. And they played it to the point where, we weren't pressing outside of our own half. So we allowed them to have the ball in their own half, completely unopposed, to the point where even if our players did press when they came into our half, they weren't allowed to go beyond the ball. So there was always 11 people between the ball and the goal, basically. And we played in this low block that essentially shrank the pitch to about under a third, about a quarter of its size. And it is awful to watch, absolutely awful to watch. And if one of our players somehow mistakenly ended up with the ball, because that didn't seem to be the plan, they just pumped it into a channel for George and John to run after, and then their job was to just get across in, and hopefully some midfielders were filling in. And that was as far as the game plan went, and it was extremely effective. It nullified a team that had been in excellent form. It was hard to watch at times. We rode our luck at times. You can't argue with that. They had some chances. I think they had one at the bar, I think, and a few other chances. But But in terms of what it was, the point of it was to do and how to get that game plan in place and executed within a day and a half, I could see the method in it. And anybody expecting him to come in and turn what had been until that point an extremely underperforming team, a team that couldn't play football, a team that couldn't pass the ball, create patterns and plays. Anybody expecting Karen to come in and all of a sudden turn us into a prime passing team were completely deluded. He was always going to come in, make us narrow, make us deep, make us hard to beat, and try and nick her on the break. And we did nearly nick it a couple of times. But the long and short of it is we came out the back end of that game with a point that I did not think we would get pre-match. I was a bit dubious about what we'd see from Cowan in terms of a manager, in terms of a tactical setup. And he proved himself the pragmatist. He set up that game with one game plan, which was don't concede, don't lose. And anything else after that is gravy. And it worked. And people really getting on the team's case because they weren't playing like people want them to play. But we're not there yet. We are right back at the start of a process to be a work in progress, aren't we? And of the preceding games that come after that, has proven that he's able to develop it, not in a linear mode. We went to Colchester and we had a bit of a less good game there. But I was quite impressed that for the first time in a long time, I saw a Shrewsbury Town team go out with a plan. It was very clear. Everybody knew their jobs. They executed it. They got a bit lucky at times, but it was the most coherent thing I've seen all most of the season, I would say, on the pitch. You could see what the point of it all was. So I was relatively laid back about it. I thought it was quite positive that we came out with a more structured approach. But yeah, it wasn't very popular and it wasn't a really great watch. And even Cowan admitted that at his post-match. Yeah, he said it's not what he would pay to watch, but it's all he could do with the time he had, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised how angry Shrewsbury Town fans were. As we'd said, we can't even remember the stats at that point. I almost got lost time. But it was like we went at one point, we were like 12 wins in 75 games. And booing and getting angry that the new manager and his team, I just didn't really see the. We can talk about this maybe with Marcus as well. I didn't see the point of getting so angry. Yes, it was.
I think a little bit of that is overspill anger from previous disappointment. There's a lot of anger in the fan base, just sort of base level anger, and I think a lot of people were hoping that he would play a lot of the young dynamic players, but the team he picked was all the experience. It was all the older lads who know how to get a game done in theory. And again, that worked perfectly. They kept us in the game. They were very diligent and they worked hard. And when they started to tire, we brought on the young lads with legs to keep us in the match. And again, even that as a game plan, that as a setup, I thought worked really well. But people have had enough of a few of the lads in that category. And I think they wanted to see your Odinakas and your Treys and your Morgans from the start. So there was disappointment in the team selection. I think people went in a little bit jaded. But yeah, positive. I think the point was a brilliant result for that game.
So we got a point in that game. Dan and Chris were at the Colchester game. Dan as a fan and Chris was doing BBC commentary. Dan, what was your kind of obviously the game didn't start very well, did it? It was quite a surprise in terms of the first few minutes. But what was your kind of overview of this game?
Well, I mean, I think it didn't start well is an understatement. We defended poorly and we 1-0 down after 3 minutes. So that's clearly not part of the agenda because Karen wanted us to be tight from the start. Now, he may well not have wanted us to do a repeat of the Barnet experience, but when you're 1-0 down, you just can't. You've got to play a little differently. I thought we were devoid of ideas in the first half. I wasn't massively surprised that they got a second. And I thought that it looked worrying. To be honest, I thought this looks like the same players we had before. And you know why? Because it is the same players we've had before. Sure, we've got a few new loanees, but he's made a point of going with the senior players and they're not really able to create too much, just as they've not been for the most of the season. Now, Karen's interview was quite positive about the second half performance. And I wasn't as vitriolic about it as many were on social media. I did think it was an improved performance. I did think we looked slightly better than they did in many regards. But, and I think Chris made this point in our little WhatsApp group, they were 2-0 up. Didn't have to do a great deal. Now, admittedly, I thought what they did try to do, Colchester, they didn't do very well. But when you're 2-0 up, the world is a different place. If we got one, then that might have been it might have been a different story. Their mistakes may have come back to haunt them. But I never had any faith that we were going to do it, to be honest, Ollie. So I came away thinking that much as we battled very, very, very hard against Barnet, and I've never seen a Town performance like that in 46 years of watching. So I've never seen a setup so like we did against Barnet. So I didn't really know what the next steps were. I knew the things I was unhappy with, but I didn't know whether Gav Cowan was going to be able to do anything about that. Now, I know Chris listened to his interview after the Barnet game, and you were placated a bit about the general approach, right?
Yeah, I think it may be worth maybe going to ask Chris's opinion on both the team selection, because I think the Barnet one, everyone kind of thought, okay, he's given the senior pros a bit of a chance. But I think there's a lot of anger after the Colchester game in terms of him picking the same players all the time. And you were quite surprised, weren't you, Chris, with the team selection for both the Barnet game and the Colchester game?
Well, I was certainly shocked by it for the Barnet game. It's not what I expected. We'd seen all these new exciting loan players come in, and the game followed the Cambridge game, obviously Appleton's last game in charge, which we lost. But I think most of us would say we thought we'd done all right in that game. There were some encouraging signs, but some of the players who I thought stood out in that game suddenly found themselves out in the cold. So in the Barnet game, it was a big surprise. I suppose for Colchester, because he'd done it once, it wasn't such a surprise that he then did something similar. But I think, his approach was clearly that he wants to trust those older senior players and ask them to prove their worth, as it were. And he slowly started to introduce the younger players off the bench. And we've seen that increasingly in the 2 home games since. We're seeing
Chris,
more
just to interject, though, the only thing that I'm not sure the word is trust, actually. I think he said, you guys have been around. Yeah, you guys have been around. Step up to the goddamn plate. I'm going to give you the chance to do it. Do it. I'm pointing for those who are listening. Your time is now. You have first crack at it. So I think that's a bit different, but I think the narrative is right. Yeah.
But yeah, the Colchester game, I felt in many ways we defended okay for most of the game, and it was individual errors that made us pay again. It was a silly error by Cabia, and even the second goal. Yes, it was a wonder strike, and there's no getting away from it. He's lashed it in from 30 yards or whatever, but it came at the end of a long passing move where I would say we should have done more to break it down and clear that ball. I think we stood off them and allowed them to pass around us and across us and create that shooting opportunity, and that was frustrating. But for the rest of the time, we did look fairly comfortable at the back, and we did have more of the ball, second half especially, in their half. So Cowan's point that it was an evolution and we were progressing and he was going to build us into a more attacking force, there was some sign of that, I would say, but we still didn't look like scoring a goal. And as you've said, the other point I was making was all this was happening at a stage when we were 2-0 down. And if we had got one, that forces Colchester to maybe respond a little bit. It could have been different again. We never know. We didn't get that goal. We didn't even get close to getting that goal, frankly. But it was. I could see some of what Karen was saying. But I'll be honest. I was sat there in Colchester listening to that interview, and I was taken aback a little bit again because by how positive he was. But I guess he's not really just speaking to us when he's doing these interviews. He's speaking to his own players, isn't he? And he's showing them that he's got their backs, I suppose. And what he's saying in the dressing room is what really matters, and we're not privy to all of that, and that's deliberate. And I think he's quite clever. I think everything he says is calculated, and he knows what he's doing. So far we're seeing progress. So it's early days, obviously very early days in his reign, but it's hard to criticize him too much when we can see the things he's promising us happening before our eyes, slowly but surely. So
dare I say it though, Chris, he's actually had a bit of luck. Now, you will never use these words because 2 of what, in my mind, and I've said it on this pod, are the most problematic players in the squad are now injured, and that's Sam Clucas and John Marcus. And quite frankly, I know they've done things in the past, but they were part of the problem, not part of the solution. And he's given them a quick chance, but they both got injured, so other people had to come in, and dare I say it, that's helped us moving forward.
Yeah, team selection is certainly a big talking point for us, I think, on this pod with selection and changes that they've made. Just on the interview post-match, it was a strange post-match interview. I think he went far too far. The Shooty Town fans online reacted with a lot of almost like Brentish comments because he used ascendancy like numerous times. He said they're buying into the process. Well, it's like he kept telling us they're buying into the process. If you keep telling me that like that often, are they?
Ollie, Charles Darwin was born in Shrewsbury, but I don't need to hear that much about evolution. Like, we've had enough of it as it is, but my goodness, he likes evolution as well.
One thing I've noticed about his interviews pre and post match is I think he obviously has an approach to communicating, not just with fans but with players, and I think he keeps it extremely simple, and he repeats the same points over and over again. Not because he's making it up as he goes along, but I think he's trying to repeatedly get messages across. He's got very small windows of opportunity to talk to the fan base, and he'll be repeating the same messages he's repeating to the players, and it's about togetherness, hard work, phrases like job and a half, phrases like, you know, ascendancy and stuff. It's positive reinforcement. It's repeated 3-4 times in an interview, and you can tell what he's trying to do is get everybody together: club, fan base, players, staff, and this is his sort of like. If he does it everywhere, if he repeats it all of the time, then it's a very consistent message, and it's much better than somebody who oscillates between today was terrible, tomorrow is great, this is bad, this is good. It's a management style that will be very stickable. I mean, you've got to back it up with performances and tactics and stuff, but communications-wise,
I agree with that. But I get it. I get the sort of, you know, getting it down to basic principles. But just a quote from his interview the other day: "We've got to run like the wind, jump higher than a mountain, be stronger than an ox." So I feel like I'm in a Disney movie.
He's used that 3 times, though. It's one of his phrases. Yeah. You'll hear that again and again.
13 battles to win the war. You know, we all know them now.
Yeah.
We all know them. But then when he's repeating them, you know, if it goes well, one of these will be written on the wall in Smithies or on a banner at the back of the South End. It's that sort of consistent, clear messaging. Again,
that's very true.
It's only messaging. If the stuff on the pitch doesn't hit, then it all sounds like bollocks. It all sounds like management speak. But that's obviously his style.
Yeah, the 0-0 draw against Barnet now looks very different as well. I was going to say that earlier. If we'd lost against Barrow and leave Swindon a bit, but lost, then I do think the 0-0 draw at Barnet looks a lot worse than it probably does.
And the thing is, if his response to a draw against Barnet and a loss to Colchester and a win against Barrow is the same across the 3 weeks, it beds in the process. It flattens out the reactionary element of what's going on. It gives him time to put something together, I think, as well. It keeps it very calm, very level with, this is what we're going at. It's the same as last week, blah, blah, blah. So I can see it's effective, but it is extremely irritating because I don't like cliches and buzzwords, but everybody's got their own style, haven't they?
Yeah. As you said, he did say after Barnet that I get it, and he said, but he also said, if in 3 or 4 games time we're playing the same, then I'll understand the frustration. And to be fair to him, we're 3 games on from that, and we're certainly against Swindon, we were not playing the same. So again, he's doing what he's promised, and as long as you're doing what you promised and it's getting results, it's hard to criticise him.
Yeah, I think it was he went too far in the Colchester. I'm sure he'd probably admit that as well. He said we should have won the game, and a few other comments which I think were a bit too far. Yes, you're right. We've said it. He was obviously, there was subliminal messages or not even subliminal messages in there for the players. They've got their back. We need to improve. We need to stick together. It is a process. I think it'll be really, obviously he's done 4 press conferences, post-match press conferences now. Obviously 2 wins, a draw and a loss. Obviously the loss was the worst one. And so it'll be interesting to see how he handles the next loss, because we will lose at some point, and how he handles that. But yeah, I agree with all your points there. I've been on a bit of a roller coaster. I think probably most Shrewsbury Town fans have with Cowan. He does speak very well. His pre-match for, I think it was Barrow. The Barrow game. I thought it was a brilliant pre-match interview. He's really got quite on board with him, and he was sharing some good messages, and also like the fact that we'll come on to this when we talk about the Swindon game. He was also talking about tactics and some insights, which I think is always really helpful. I always appreciate that as a fan when you have a manager sharing some insight in terms of what they're doing. So obviously 2 wins, a draw and a loss is obviously a good record, of 50% win ratio.
Well, I was just going to say, isn't it interesting that we're all watching the pre and post match? When have we all done that
exactly.
for ages?
And also worth just commenting as well.
I was going to say it's quite a small sample size, isn't it? 4 games.
Yeah, it is.
So if the results are positive and the performance is positive, people cut you a lot of slack on that. If we'd lost all 4 of these games, you'd be absolutely killing them for it, because it's completely dependent on what happens on the pitch. But I can see the method in it.
Yeah, and I think also this is new for him. That's a good thing. That's a bad thing. But also doing an interview after a loss is also quite challenging. Even someone like Steve Cottrell, who's managed God knows how many games, he must be way over 1,000 now. He struggles with a defeat interview. So yeah, let's move on from that game. I thought the Barrow game was an interesting one. Let's say it was a huge game, Mike, and one
Massive.
we just had to win.
Yeah, and it was. I felt like it was a development on the Barnet game where we set up with a similar sort of approach. Really, we were dogged, we were hard to beat. All the Gaz's cliches that we'll get to, but we tried to be a bit more offensive when we could. So we pressed outside of our half. We were a bit further up the pitch, but ultimately it was a bit of a scrap of a game. And we just got the fundamental was we got the job done, didn't we? I don't know, like I didn't come out of that game with any particularly strong emotions apart from just thank God we won it. Really, it wasn't a good performance by the team. I think both teams were fairly poor, but we shaded it in terms of being the slightly better team on the night, I think, and having the home advantage maybe helps with that. I don't know what you guys thought of it. It wasn't one that lived long in the memory, I don't think.
No, it was. Who knew that the midfield partnership of Sang and Perry was a winning formula? Because when we played those two together in the last two games, obviously that's worked quite well. And it was an interesting team selection, obviously, in terms of bringing a couple of players in and making a few changes. So I think it's quite interesting that Gav Cowan has made some changes there. But yeah, I think you're right, Mike. The result was everything in this game. A really poor mistake from Sang that gave them the chance to score, and they did. It was a good finish. Yeah. But yeah, an interesting one from your perspective, Chris, because not for the first time this season, you were on the other side from the West End.
I think, I did a few times last season. I think it was my first time this season, actually. But yeah, my son was massive.
I'm just so used to saying you were over in the posh area.
I've not been in the Sovereign this season, Ollie. No, I'm just stuck with you common people this time around. No, but this game we were on the other side because my son Thomas was mascot. Second time he's done it. First time was 3 years ago when we thrashed Cambridge 5-1. So yeah, he was there again and hoping a bit of the luck that he'd had that day would rub off on them again. And great experience meeting all the players and so on. And just a few interesting bits as well. You get there early and you're taken around for a tour. And we found ourselves in the technical area before the game. And we had quite a long chat with Dave Edwards, obviously now our assistant head coach. And he's such an accommodating guy. And we've met him a couple of times. And he was really chatty with us. And he talked us through the team, before it had been announced. And he was explaining some of their thinking behind some of the selections, which was really interesting. So, for example, I think Anthony Scully was, they'd stuck with him for this game, but they'd subbed him at half-time at Colchester. And I think he was very close to missing out in this game. I think Tommy McDermott was very close to getting selected ahead of him. I think there was a feeling that they felt Anthony Scully owed them a performance and they decided to stick with him. Obviously, he went on to score that night, but that was the phrase Dave actually used to us. We feel he owes us a performance. So, yeah, he's in tonight. But we also asked him about some of the players that haven't appeared so far, or at least hadn't appeared at this point. So some of the lone lads, Trey Ogunsoye and Temple Ojinaka. And we were asking, what's your views on those players? And I was expecting him to not really say much. But again, he was fairly open with us. He said that they really like Trey Ogunsoye. They've watched a lot of video footage of him in action and been playing for Sunderland and really like what they see. I think they basically gave us the impression they haven't seen that in training at Shrewsbury. They felt he needs to up it a bit, but there was something there. And he was on the bench for that Barrow game. And Dave did actually say to us, I think you'll see him tonight. Now, as it turns out, we didn't, but I think that was more the game situation. It was obviously a tense game. It was close towards the end, and it wasn't a time for making changes. They wanted to stick with what was on the pitch, but they were obviously thinking about it, and he went on to get his chance against Swindon, so that was good. And then Temple Ojinaka, they were saying that, again, a player that they like, but they'd had a chat with him, and they really believe he's a defender. Now, we've only seen him play in midfield. We saw him against Cambridge as a holding midfielder, but I get the feeling if he's going to play at all, he's going to play as a centre-back in this team. Right centre-back. They basically gave the impression that he was an option along with Stubbs and Hull for that right side of the centre of the three-man defence. So I think that's why he's biding his time. And they said basically he's a victim of the fact that we've got so many loans. They have to leave someone out, and his is a position where they've got other options that they're putting on the bench ahead of him. So he's the one who's not made the cut. But it's not that they don't like him. It's not that they're desperate to send him back to Wolves or anything. that was the reasoning. And so as a fan, that was interesting because that's.
Chris, can I ask a question on that? I mean, you might not know the answer, but so I'm always intrigued with this. So I guess Wolves think he's a holding midfielder. Or have I imagined that? Is that what they? So what do they make of him being played out of position?
Well, no. So Wolves don't think he's a holding midfielder, Dan. If you look at the announcement when we signed him, that was quite interesting. When he was signed, Shrewsbury announced that they'd signed midfielder Temple Ojinaka. Wolves announced that they'd loaned defender Temple Ojinaka to Shrewsbury. So I think they see him.
I hadn't picked that up. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I think they agree with Dave Edwards by the sounds of it. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm sure they gave the impression that we're likely to see him at some point, but it might take injury and/or suspension to get him into the squad. I would imagine it's going to need one of the centre backs to be out, or to have picked, accumulated yellow cards, and we're getting to that stage of the season where that's going to happen. So at some point, I'm sure he'll get a chance, but he might have to bide his time. So yeah, we just thought that was really interesting. We also got a chat with Sam Klukas, by the way. I know you've already mentioned him tonight, Dan. He was really lovely. He remembered Thomas because we'd sat with him at that breakfast they do in the summer. We went to that, and he was really good. He came up to us and said, "I was on your table back in August," and yeah, he was a good lad. But he was telling us that injury's not as bad as they'd first thought. He's basically a week or so away. That he's an option on Tuesday or next weekend potentially. But it'd be interesting to see what Gavin Cowan does about that, because obviously since then, as Dan said, he's been forced to make changes, and that midfield we've had of Sang and Taylor has actually done. Taylor Perry has done very well. So I'd imagine maybe Sam has to fight his way back from the substitutes bench, because I don't see Gavin Cowan as the type of manager to make changes for something that's working.
Yeah. No, I agree with that, Chris. I think it's the formation piece is quite interesting, isn't it? That Gavin Cowan came out and said he didn't see Sam Klukas as a wing back. They clearly don't. Well, not necessarily clearly, but they don't seem to see Ruffles as a central midfielder either. And obviously he's been playing in left centre back.
How well has he done there as well, by the way?
Yeah, he has done really, really well. But it's interesting, isn't it? There's a fan perspective that professional football managers, people in the game will see players differently. But I think I'd probably say, Mike, we would be interested in your opinion, that I think probably Gavin Cowan and the team are probably right with their assessments of those players.
Yeah. I think it's something that you can tell that Gav Cowan's been watching the town this season. He's always talks about coming down with this lad and watching it. Dave Edwards is a fan, and Jamie, when they can get there, they're watching games. And they've made the same conclusions that most of the fan base have been making when we're talking about square pegs in round holes and saying, why is Sam Klukas out at left wing back? I call him Klukas.
You know what? I don't think Sam Klukas thinks he's a left back either. No one thinks it.
He kept saying he didn't want to play there. In interviews after matches, he would say, I don't like playing out there. I'm doing a job for the club. I'd rather be on the inside. Like you're saying about Ruffles, he was in the midfield, and we were saying, well, we've got a midfield on the left. And a lot of fans kept saying this sort of stuff. And Cowan's come in and he's sort of rectified all this stuff. It's another thing that makes me think he sort of gets the players that he's got to work with, and he gets the problems that were existing in the squad, and why we may benefit from this slightly unique experience of the guy we've employed to do the job has actually been coming to town games and watching them online and is a fan. He's sort of, is he 6 or 8 weeks down the road compared to somebody else who would have come in and has no background on the town? It's another sort of quirk of the recruitment, isn't it? But yeah, I'm liking that he's sort of finessing people in where they want. I think the whole thing about Temple is they probably said to him, where do you want to play? And he's probably said, well, I'm a centre back. So that's probably where they got that from. It's as simple as asking people where they want to play, I think, sometimes.
Dave was clear they'd had a chat with him. I mean, that's exactly right, Mike. He said they talked to him, and that's where he sees himself primarily. He's willing to play anywhere for the team, I suspect, but they want to go with him.
I think they all will, probably.
His natural position.
Yeah, there definitely seems to be something. And I don't know whether it was Appleton, he clearly fell out with a couple of players. Obviously, we had a bomb squad, didn't we? Obviously, Stubbs was kind of, sent away from first team action. Gavin Cowan's talked quite a few times. Again, it's quite nice, refreshing that he actually just share some of these things. Obviously, he talked about Mal Benning as well, didn't he? They had a conversation with him, and he's back into the squad now. Sam Stubbs came back in straight away. They do seem to do everything they can to kind of get the players on side and give players opportunities. And it's interesting, isn't it? Almost they're giving them chances as well, because Scully was terrible against Colchester, and to be honest, I thought he was actually really poor against Barrow as well. I think he was quite lucky to start the game against Swindon. I don't know if anyone disagrees with that, but obviously, in both those games, he did two really, really important things, and they both led to goals, which is obviously the most expensive or most important currency in football. That he obviously contributed to 2 goals. So yeah, I guess that's one of the I guess that's the thing with the number 10. You're not always going to see a performance for 90 minutes, but to be fair to Scully, while as frustrating it might be, he has delivered, contributed to 2 goals.
I think he's victim of the same thing that people used to complain about Sean Morley, and I think I've mentioned this on previous pods. He plays in a high risk position, and in a high risk way. He dribbles, he takes people on. That might work 1 time out of 10, and the 9 times it doesn't, people are on your back. What the hell is he doing? But the 1 time it works, like you say, he's nipping in the back stick with a goal, or he's playing that beautiful through ball against Swindon that goes through 3 Swindon players and puts Burko away. And that's what he's there for. I think he could be contributing a little bit more in the round. His work rate could up a little bit, and he could be less wasteful. But he's always going to be more wasteful than he isn't, if you know what I mean, because of the position he plays and the way he plays and the skill set is that he's got. But when it works, it really works. When it doesn't, he looks like the worst player on the pitch. For example, that ball he plays on Saturday against Swindon, we'll get to it. That was a very significant contribution. But if you look at the player ratings from various sort of reviews of the game, he averaged, he was consistently the worst rated player in all of the stuff that I've seen. So that's the frustrating sort of dichotomy of Scully, is that he's effective, but overall
he's effective in very small doses.
Yeah,
and he probably could do more in holistically throughout the whole game. But any final comments before we move on from the Barry game? I thought it was a key win, but obviously the Colchester game is going to be a fascinating one to get into.
Couple of things, Ollie. One, it's worth noting this is the game when John Marquis picked up his injury. He went off very early in this game. Crowd reaction to that was something that I think raised a few eyebrows. There are quite a few people in the Shrewsbury end cheering John Marquis off the pitch, as it were, celebrating his injury, which I'll be honest, I wasn't comfortable with. I don't like that kind of thing, and I don't know, maybe I'm a happy clapper, but I just don't like it. I didn't see the need for it, and I thought it was.
I'll go a level up from that, Liz. It's bullshit, right?
Cheers, Dan. Yeah, okay. I'm with you. I'm trying to be diplomatic. Go hard.
But the point is about people who get injured. If you go around cheering people who suffer painful injuries, that not just stop them doing their job, but are likely to affect them individually, then I think you need to get a bit more classy. To be honest,
we can. He just had a baby as well. It was a big night for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But even then, just be a bit more classy. You don't need to do it. And if you think it's cool, then I think you need to have a word with yourself, to be honest, because we can do better than that.
I've not been as big a fan this season, but I wouldn't boo a guy for getting injured. It's mental. Or cheering off, or whatever the hell it was.
I wouldn't pick him, but that's a different point, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, totally exactly. Agree. Yeah, like you can sort of argue the toss about his performances, but the guy's the captain of the club. He's a human being. He works hard. He puts his all out there for the team. He might not be quite there quality-wise at the moment, but you should be cheering that guy off. He's been picked. He's just doing his best. It's an odd thing to do for a player on your own team. I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of it for me, really. I'm not sure what the point of it is.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just to kind of all of us make a comment on that. I thought it was really poor. I can understand it to a certain extent. He has been poor, but I don't understand why you'd cheer a player off. It does. No one. We don't benefit. The only teams that benefit for that is our relegation rivals, if our fans are acting in like that. And as Kevin keeps saying, we all need to kind of stick together. So yeah, very, very childish behaviour, I'd say. And yeah, hopefully he's okay, and hopefully his little one is as well, and his partner as well. Because yeah, Kevin shared, didn't they, that his partner had her induction done around his training and future time football matches. So if that's not put in the club first, there's not much else is. So yeah,
exactly.
Poor.
Just one other point on that Barrow game I just wanted to make. It's worth noting it was 0-0 at half time. So at this point, we've played 2.5 games under Gavin Cowan and not scored a goal. So, that causes anxiety in the fan base. And so I suspect causes anxiety in Gavin as well. Or at least, I'm sure he was desperate to see that first goal. And then second half, 2 scrappy goals, a free kick, a long throw, Josh Ruffles for both of them getting his head on it and setting up the chance for Scully and then Hoole to tap in from close range. Not goals that will win goal of the season competitions, but two very important goals for Shrewsbury and for Gavin Cowan, I'd suggest. And there was an outpouring of emotion, certainly when that first one went in. It was a big game, that game, a lot of pressure on it. If we'd lost that game, Barrow suddenly looked like they're pulling away from us and we're very much in a three-way battle for relegation. That's how it felt at the time. It shows how much things can change in just a few days, but that's certainly how it felt going into that game. It felt like we had to win it.
I also, one thing I did afterwards is, because my life is particularly rock and roll, I listened to the Barrow BBC Cumbria podcast, as I'm sure you all did. I know Ollie has something to do with it because he even got a name check. So I listened to that just because I was quite interested to see what they made of their own performance. And oh my days, they did not like it at all. And they clearly they went for just about every member of their team, but they also were quite complimentary about, one, the way we set up. They said that we were quite hard to play against, but two, if there was a bouncing ball, then, and one of the lines that stuck with me was heads were going in from blue and amber players. And I don't actually remember any situation where I remember thinking that at the time, but they said it. They said it looked like the new manager had got them thinking, this is the most important game of your life. Everything matters. Go in. And I thought that was quite interesting. And the podcast is worth 45 minutes of your time if you're sad enough to want to invest it in a Barrow FC sports team. No, okay. It may be just me, but there we go. Mike, sorry.
But I was going to say, what's one of Gareth's many sayings? Win the big moments in each box. That's throwing your head in there. They were two big moments. We lob a ball in from a throw or lob a ball in from a free kick. Win the big moments. Win the header. Win the knockdown. Again, it's Gav sort of putting on the pitch what he spouts, and there you go. You got to sort of buy into it. There you go. Yeah.
And also, they took a lad off at half time whose name escapes me now. I should have done some prep, Ollie, but I forgot. Who they got on loan from Blackburn. And I saw Blackburn earlier in the season, and they're not as bad a side as they look on paper. They are down there fighting for their life, but I think they're a reasonable team. He was brilliant. And I commented to a mate of mine who, that was the reason I was watching that game, he was a Blackburn fan. He's got some potential. And I couldn't believe it when I then saw he was on the starting 11 for Barrow. I thought, we are getting for a long, long night. He went off at half time. Cabia had run him ragged. And I thought, football, isn't it weird? He was looking really good in the Championship. Young lad, needed some game time, and he can't handle Shrewsbury Town.
Yeah, well, they actually made two substitutions at half time. They took off Malcolm and Powell at half time. They were poor. And I think, watching the goals back if you're thinking it from a Barrow perspective, the defending from a Barrow side was a shambles. You've got to take your chances and all that. And Huell's finish in particular, I thought was really good. But yeah, we got the win. But I think without being, rude or detrimental to Shrewsbury Town, I don't think anyone was expecting what we saw against Swindon. We were absolutely fucking awesome. We were absolutely sublime in every single possible aspect. Application, the tactics, the game plan, the execution. We were absolutely superb. And everyone who's listened to the podcast knows I do love stats and I love a bit of XG. We had 3.9 XG and they had 0.8. We absolutely battered them. And to be fair to Ian Holloway, he's an interesting character. He said we thoroughly deserved to win the game as well. And he said you couldn't tell the difference between if you watch those teams, you wouldn't know who was at the top and who was down the bottom.
And Ollie, what a thoroughly brilliant post-match interview from Ian Holloway.
I haven't actually watched it. I've only seen comments that Chris shared, to be honest. I probably should go back and watch it.
He wasn't going to... Yeah, he wasn't going to rise to this notion that they had a day less time to prepare. He wasn't going to rise to this notion that maybe the referee had given this, whatever. None of that. He just said Shrewsbury better than us. Whatever you might.
We should have had a pen as well against Barrow. We forgot that. That was ridiculous. That should be a penalty. We haven't had a penalty all season, but yeah.
But Holloway's interview on BBC Radio Wiltshire is worth 5 minutes of your time, and not because he goes mad, because he's not having any. To use my favourite word this evening, he's not having any bullshit. You said they were better than us. We need to do better than that. But then again, we have won the last 4. So you do have bad games. He just sounded like a thoroughly reasonable human being, which is not something I've always said about Ian Holloway, actually. But I did like that interview. It was very good.
No. And yeah, coming into this game, Mike, what were your expectations? Ask Chris the same question.
Yeah, speaking to a few guys pre-match, I was saying I would take 1 point from the next 2 games. I would just be happy with the point and just some battling performances, just some, more of what we've seen. We'll probably end up losing them just because these teams are in so much better form than us, so much better placed in the league that you could find it tough. I genuinely could not believe what I was watching on Saturday. I was, looking around me, there's people absolutely stunned in the crowd that these are the same group of players that we have watched all season be absolutely abject, show no desire, no effort, no work rate, no ability on the ball, no quality. That was all completely different on Saturday. That was no shithouse, backs to the wall, smash and grab. We didn't, get lucky. We could have won that by more. We hit the bar. We had 2 or 3 overloads late on that we could have probably done better with. And the goal that Swindon scored, they didn't even deserve. It was a mucky bit of play in the box, and it's skanked in off the back of 2 deflections. Watching it, you could absolutely see the plan of the game take place. At the start, we went out to put them on the back foot. We went out to push them back. They weren't ready for us to be proactive and positive, and we rattled them early doors, and we got a goal early doors, and that was totally the plan. The plan was to get forward and hit them with aggression and pace. Then we sat in and we got really deep. We did our own half pressing, and we made ourselves very hard to beat to try and get into half time with that goal ahead. And it very, very nearly worked, apart from we missed our good chance and then they scored. But we came back out in the second half, and it was positivity again. We went out at them. Then when we dug in, and then in the end of the game, we pushed again. And you could see that they plan. I think from what I can see there, they planned phases of the match, and you could see that every single person on that team knew what they had to do. And again, this is Gav Cowan's same phrase: when with the ball and without the ball, in each third of the pitch, they know where they've got to be. And if they all know where they've got to be, they know where their teammates are. They know where they can pass it. They know he's taken a lot of the thinking away from that team, because they play a lot of channel balls. But if you know there's a channel ball coming, you'll be ready for the channel ball. And the channel ball is then very effective. It's not aimless because there's people in the right places. So I just found it really good. And he sets us up, we've always talked about the midfield of Perry and Sang. It's very lightweight. It's not what you would pick as a first team, but he sets the team up so that they don't have to do too much of the stuff they're not very good at. Frankly, they sit and screen that back line, and then they sort of get the ball away and get it into channels, and then they use their energy to get up with it. They're not trying to play tippy-tappy, balls through the middle. And when Sang did do it on Saturday, he did give the ball away. But the way he sets the team up, it really makes up for a lot of our shortcomings that we've seen all season, because they're pushed to the side and we can play effectively over the top of them. So I loved it. It was great. My lad has been very difficult to get to football recently. He's buzzing for Tuesday night. Can't wait to go. And the whole thing was just such a positive experience. Even at the end, you can tell Cowan is a real peaceful person. He's got his arm around people. He's cuddling everybody as they come off. When they're getting subbed off, he's telling them why. He's telling them what he thought of them. You can see, and at the end, he's going around with all the players and pointing at them, saying they did it. It's very good. It's really encouraging, as much as I didn't think it would be. It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's great. Chris, what was your thoughts going into this game? What was your expectations?
I honestly said to my son Saturday morning, I had a feeling that this was a game we could win. I wasn't expecting a performance like that, but there was something about it. Swindon had to play Wednesday night.
We all said that.
Me too. I thought, do I say this? Because no one will believe me. But
correct.
Honestly, I feel I need to go and bring my son down and put my son in front of you, and he'll tell you. But I honestly I thought they've played Wednesday night. They had a couple of injuries. They had a defender, Tafizoli, missing. Junior Hoylett wasn't playing. I just had a feeling that this was a game that we'd be able to compete in and maybe cause a surprise. But it's, Mike's just given I thought that was really a good tactical analysis of the way we played that game. And it was beyond anything I expected. It was the most fun I've had watching Shrewsbury Town since the win against Wrexham last season, I would say. That stood out because of, it was a dramatic, pulsating game against our fiercest rivals, as it were. This was just different. It stands out for the sheer quality of our performance. And there isn't a player on the pitch you could say was poor. Everybody's had, you've made the comments earlier that Scully was probably our weakest player on the pitch. I can see that, but as you've also said, he played a key part. He sets up the second goal with a stunning pass, and everybody's contributed in that game. There's nobody, the goalkeeper, what a revelation Matt Cox has been. A couple of saves in that first half that kept, different story if that goes in. Maybe our heads drop or whatever, but they don't, because he makes the save. It was just terrific. We should have been 2-0 up. You and Morgan's finally got his first goal for the club, which was great. You should have had a second. What a move that was. And the cross that comes in just towards the end of the first half. And he's unfortunately hit the bar, and they've gone straight up the other end and made it 1-1. And you'd think heads could drop from that. But even at half time, I was talking to Mike, and we were both saying, how good was that? And normally, if Shrewsbury have conceded an equaliser bang on half time, it gives you something to moan about, doesn't it? But while we were a little bit disappointed, we're not moaning because we can't criticise what we've just watched. And then they've come out second half, and it's just got better and better. So I loved it. The challenge now is that that's the bar. Can they do that again, or even close to it? Because if they do that again on Tuesday, then we've got a chance against Notts County. They won 5 in a row and then drew their latest game away to the league leaders. So let's not make it no bones about it. They're a strong side. But our performance on Saturday will give them a game, no doubt about it. If we can play like that again, we've got a chance.
If I could come in on that, Chris, this is a bit Gav Cowan-esque, but he does always say, don't get too high with the highs and too low with the lows. Now, I totally get why we can, it was a brilliant performance and we've had far too few of them. But it did remind me that once I finished listening to the Barrow FC podcast, I obviously went and watched Swindon play Newport, as I'm sure all of you guys must know. Okay.
Dan, anyway, you really have a problem.
Rock and roll
Jesus
in this
Christ,
house.
Man. Yeah.
Rock and roll. I tell you, Wednesday was brilliant in our eyes. But it was quite interesting. The kids were in bed. It was, what else do you watch? Don't answer that. The point for me is that Swindon looked tired. And this is the type of territory Ian Holloway could easily have gone over in his interview, but he didn't. And I think that stands for him. They beat Newport, but Newport will have felt pretty unlucky, hard done by in that game. The first thing was that Newport should have had a penalty, and then he didn't get it. Swindon went right at the end and scored, and then the Newport central defender finished brilliantly right into his own net.
Are we a Newport podcast now?
Yeah, what's going on?
Yeah, no, my point is that Swindon were not great. And then the former Stevenage lad went off. Is it Tabatoli? So we knew he wasn't playing. Junior Hoylett limped off. We knew he wasn't playing. 2 other players weren't even in the starting lineup. And I couldn't help but think it's not a bad time to be playing Swindon. So I'm not saying that doesn't mean our performance wasn't brilliant, because I think it was. But I do think the context of Swindon, actually, I know they'd won the last 4, but they really were there to be played against in that sense. They did have 4 players out, and they only had sort of 72 hours to get ready. I think we couldn't ask for much more. The point about Notts County is well made, though, Chris. They will be a different kettle of fish. And I don't expect us to beat Notts County, but if we can play with the same verve, then I'll be happy enough.
Yeah, I think Swindon came into the game thinking this was going to be easy. Quite full of themselves potentially.
Oh, I don't agree with that, Ollie.
I don't know.
I think they realised they were in a tougher position than we realised they were in.
No,
or
but
maybe Cowan did realise, and that's why he went for him.
Well, I imagine, I think it's human nature to be the Swindon players, and it's not a criticism of them. If you're, team at the top, we saw it at Cambridge, didn't they? They turned up, they thought they were going to just walk all over us, and they got a rude awakening. And I think that's where the feistiness came from them. They were trying to fight us. Ripley, a bit of an idiot in goal, was doing all sorts of things. Their centre-backs were getting into niggles. Palmer was getting involved and all these things. But the Shrewsbury players stayed calm. But I think they were getting frustrated because they didn't expect this to happen. They thought it was going to be an easy win for them. And it wasn't. And we battered them. It was a fantastic performance for Shrewsbury.
What you're just saying about the crowd there, God, it made me miss League One. Proper away crowds, an atmosphere, a bit of needle in a game. Like I say, all the kids around us were really into it and standing up and watching that's football to me. I can't stand Barrow coming and bringing 80 people and there's no atmosphere and it's a completely dead thing. I love that crowd being full and having an away crowd.
It doesn't help, does it, when our crowd is so flat? And there's no surprise that our crowds are flat.
It doesn't have to be. I mean, Saturday's show, it doesn't have to be flat. It's actually relatively easy to get us up. You just got to put a bit of effort in. It doesn't matter going 3. Yeah, exactly. And having something to feed off. So that's another reason to get promoted again, to make football, proper atmospheres, proper match days. Well,
I'm sure we always got us back in League One. I'd quite enjoy a promotion season just for winning games and having that feeling more often, because too often we've been quite sad on a Sunday morning. But I know Chris is itching to share a stat.
Oh, yes, my favourite stat from Saturday. We scored in both halves of that game, obviously. 1-1 at half-time, end up winning 3-1. That we were the last team left in League Two to have scored a goal in both halves of a football match this season. It's crazy that it's taken us 29 games to do that. And I've had I mentioned that stat. A couple of people said that can't be right. We must have done it, but we really haven't. Even the 3-3 draw with Gillingham or the 3-1 win at Barnet, in both those games, we scored all 3 of those goals in the first half. we hadn't once scored in both halves of a match this season. And I think it says that we hadn't really put a 90 minutes performance in this season. There's not been one game where you could say we played well both halves. Now we can, because in this game, we undoubtedly played well in both halves, and it was great to see.
So one other thing I noticed is the way the team's set up is that we've got headers from corners from Boyle and stuff. The attacking unit is doing the attacking and being very effective. Case in point being George Lloyd's goal. If he misses it, Morgan stood right behind him to pop it in the net as well. We've got people, and this goes back to something that was mentioned in the post-match about Dave Edwards' advice to some of these footballers about finishing their runs. He was very big on that. He said Edwards has been talking to Morgan particularly about make sure you're finishing your runs. If you're running to the box, don't stop running until the ball's gone. And I think a lot of times this season we've been stood there and the ball's gone in the box. God, why didn't he carry on after that? Why didn't he commit? Why didn't he gamble? And there's a case in point there. We're starting to gamble and starting to commit more to these what look like lost causes, even if it's a long punt into a corner. They don't stop running until the ball runs over the line, and sometimes they catch it and we're in behind. And I think again, it's just a little tweak that Edwards has made under the guidance of Cowan and using some of his experience. Dave Edwards never stopped running, did he? And he's putting that into the team. That's very positive to see.
That was a Dave Edwards goal, wasn't it, Mike?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, just breaking. Yeah, breaking to keep up with it and diving in just at the last minute. So. Again, a very positive sign that the strikers. I mean, have we had two strikers score in the same game for a while? Maybe it might
probably not.
But yeah, that's a bit of an odd stat as well, probably.
Second goal for me.
I'll give you another odd one, right? If you look at the most clean sheets at home in League Two this year, we're top. Mm-hmm. We've got 7 clean sheets. Nobody else has got 7. We are bottom.
I feel like it.
We are bottom away from home. We've got 1, and everybody else has got more than 1, and that was 0-0 at Barrow, right? But we don't concede that many goals at home. But if we do concede goals, then sometimes it can go quite badly wrong, like Bristol Rovers.
Yeah, the second goal for me was sublime, absolutely sublime. For 2 main reasons. There's one, obviously, like the actual play. Really good ball from Scully. Brilliant run from Burko on the left-hand side. As we said, Lloyd finishes runs, finishes. He'll take those chances, to be fair to him. He gets a lot of stick, but given those chances, he will score them. I'm very confident in that. The second thing I loved most about that goal is that Gavin Cowan was talking about it in the press conference, talking about how they'd trained for that. And a lot of football these days is a lot of about these set plays. Not set pieces, but set plays, design runs, as Mike was saying earlier, getting that kind of chemistry and knowledge among the players. And that is a goal that they'd worked on. Mm-hmm. And
the thing is, I think this is about, I think it was Mike who made the point about simplicity. Now, wing backs are there to attack. They're not there to defend. Now, they do have to do that periodically, but they're there to attack. And you want the ball inside the fullback if you're a wing back. Now, sure, Scully's pass was a brilliant pass. That was above what you'd expect. But the ball inside the fullback, for someone who's quick, that should be something that I don't think is that hard to get across. And it looks like they did it. And fair play, Burko, I'm not sure. I thought that was going to be, a particularly sensible move. But at the same time, he's brought him in immediately. He thinks he can do it. And he's got a bit of defending to learn, I think, but going forward, oh my days, what a breath of fresh air.
And that's exactly what Ryan, that Birmingham fan, told us about Gavin Cowan's football, is his fullbacks are attacking. And to be honest, I was a little bit, when I read that he likes 3 at the back, I think we're all a bit tired. We're tired of losing football, and I think 3 at the back is tied for Shrewsbury Town fans to losing football. But I do like, there is a clear structure of play. 3 at the back, 2 midfielders, number 10, strikers, wing backs that get forward. There is some simplicity and something I quite like about the way he sets us up.
Just linked onto that, I think we've been talking a lot about the attacking unit and the fullbacks getting forward and the proactive play. My 3 men of the match were Luca Hall, Boyle and Ruffles. I thought those 3 as 3 centre halves, they didn't put a foot wrong all day. Particularly Luca Hall was I think the standout of the 3. Not only is he setting a goal up, I don't think he missed a header all day. He was excellent at intercepting through balls, putting his foot in for a tackle, and his distribution, his use of the ball, his ball up the channel to sort of get Cabia away and things. He was brilliant on Saturday. I think he's hitting another bit of form. But Boyle was commanding. He headed. He kicked everything. He was the Will Boyle that we were sold when he signed. I think we're starting to see it now. He's sort of been given the main man role, hasn't he? We've jettisoned Anderson a little bit. Stubbs has moved out a little bit. Boyle's there to control that back line with a bit of pace next to him. And then, Ruffles looks like he's always played centre half, doesn't he? He's very effective. But again, he breaks forward with the ball. So we have Hoole and Ruffles. When we got the ball, one of them will go and join in a little bit forward and leave a 2. And I think that's a little bit of a tactical tweak of Cowan, and they're playing in front of a very decent goalkeeper who's given him a lot of confidence. But I think credit to Luca Hall, excellent job on Saturday.
Potentially another one, Mike, isn't it, where maybe Gavin Cowan's also a lucky manager, because Hall's playing there because Stubbs got injured. In his first, he picked Stubbs to play right centre back, and Hull was playing wing back, and he's made the change because of the injury. And as you say, it's blooming worked, because Hull's been fantastic again. So maybe he's riding his luck. And Will Boyle, I think that's good management. He's not had the best of start to the season, but that was playing on the left centre back, hasn't he? And he looks like a different player to me, playing in the middle of the three, which is where we're seeing him now. And he's been very, very, very good. And that's the player we expected him to be. And now, obviously, with the injury to Marquis, he's our captain as well. And he is a natural leader, isn't he? You can see that about him. He's just got that charisma and that personality on the pitch. He is a natural leader. So it all feels like it's kind of falling into place. So, hope I'm not getting too. I've got to keep calm, as Dan's told me. I mustn't get carried away, but. There's promising signs there.
And I just want to talk about the management aspect of Gavin Cowan and the whole team, it seems, as well, because young lads, as a podcast, we almost have a bit of a policy that we don't want to criticize young kids too much, because it's not really very fair. But I think it's fair to say that Cabby has been struggling for a few months now. That game against Colchester was really, really poor, not only defensively but also offensively. But I think it's really, really interesting how Stubbs came back and looked good. Shame he got injured. Obviously, Benning has come on and done a pretty good job. But Cabby had a terrible night against Colchester, and he's a really, really young kid. And it'd be interesting to get Dan's opinion on Cabby on Saturday. But I thought he did all right. He wasn't amazing, but I thought he did all right. And I thought it was a good, decent performance after what would have been probably the worst night in his professional career on Tuesday night.
Yeah, I think young players have ups and downs, and I mean all players have ups and downs. But I do think we have to remember that these are people making their way. I mean, Morgan has been a real breath of fresh air. That's his first goal in senior football. He's right at the beginning of his journey. And Cabby, I mean, how many games has he played in league football, Ollie? I don't know, 30, 25?
In most of the games this season, but he's Kelsey's first loan at Shrewsbury.
We can't let his learning curve detract from the fact that he's got a lot of ability as a footballer, and you'd hope that a new manager, a younger manager, a manager who's definitely good on vibes, is going to be able to get a bit more out of him. So, I mean, I think Cabby could well play a significant role towards the tail end of this season, and he's much more likely to do that under Gav Cowan than he was under Michael Appleton, I think. I should say as well, Luca Hall, after he had a total car wreck against MK Dons, he was abysmal in exactly that role. And yet, on Saturday, as Mike very rightly said, he didn't put foot wrong.
Yeah, no, definitely. And talking of impact, and you mentioned Appleton, the Appleton name there. I think some credit has got to go to Appleton, because Morgan, if you talk of listen to his post match was brilliant. Really, really recommend going to his finish for that goal was sublime. It was really calm finish. We hear he's a poacher. He's got a lot of goals for Brentford coming up through the under-21s, and we saw that as a really good finish. His winning runs, his long throw. Is also a bit of a weapon, which is great. But I think also we've got to give credit to Appleton for the recruitment, and I think also we've got to talk about Cox. How good has Cox been, Dan? And I know you met a member of the Cox family.
Yeah, I mean, again, I felt that we didn't have a goalkeeping problem. It wasn't the first thing I was worried about, but Cox has come in and he's improved us in that position. Okay, and I think that is worth mentioning. He's got a demeanour about him that I find very impressive. It reminds me a bit of Kelleher, at Brentford ahead of him. There's something about him that actually he doesn't do very much wrong. And I was parking up at Colchester. For those who've not been to Colchester, it's right on the A12, and you park in the park and ride on the other side of the A12, and there's a then you go over the little bridge to the ground. So it's a 5-6 minute walk, and I was in the queue to get my ticket, and the guy behind me saw my rather fetching blue and amber bobble hat and just said, "Oh, you're obviously here to watch the town." Got chatting, and it was Matt Cox's dad. I have to say, really nice guy. He's now obviously watching every game that Shrewsbury Town play, but he's on a learning curve. But he did say that he felt that that Matt was, he was given a bit of confidence. He was told, "You're a good goalkeeper. You're going to come here and do good things." Now, that isn't a quote for what his dad said, but the impression was that he was empowered. It sounds like I'm back at work, but I liked the vibes. The vibes were that you can contribute something to this team. You're good. And he sounded like, despite the fact we we hadn't had the Swindon game, that he was, he was rising to the challenge. And I think every one of us would probably agree that's right. He has been a plus. His kicking against Colchester was not always great, but if he had 5 minutes where we had 4 or 5 kicks that just went skew with, but if that's all I've got against him, then I haven't got any problem with him at all. He looks like a really good addition. And as you say, Ollie, who brought him in? Appleton. So something was going well there. Just I'm not convinced that Appleton would have got the best out of them all.
No, I'm not sure he was going to. And yeah, we do have to have obviously a bit of a bloated squad because obviously we have the bomb squad. We have Mal Benning back in. I think it's worth just making a comment about Mal Benning. 500 games as a professional is a very, very commendable achievement. So congratulations to Mal. And I thought he's done quite well as well in the games that he's played. Also, we've got some competition at left wing back now. So yeah, good to see. And yeah, congratulations to him. It's a great achievement. Before we close, I think it's only fair to look at the league table and have to say, those who are watching, those on the podcast won't see this because if you're watching on YouTube, you will. Shrewsbury Town are now the heady heights of 19th in League 2 now. I only said League 1 again. We got 29 points. Barrow below us and Bristol Rovers have got 27 points. Crawley 26, Harrogate 22 and Newport 21. Harrogate obviously won 2 games ago. They drew as well, so they got a win and a draw in their last 2 games. And yeah, fortunately, Shrewsbury obviously 2 wins. Barrow, with Chris's favourite manager, got a win. But fortunately for us, Bristol Rovers, Crawley, and Newport kept lost on Saturday. And yeah, it's nice to see. Shrewsbury Town win on Tuesday night. And Cheltenham don't. We're actually ahead of Cheltenham, and it felt like Cheltenham had got out of the relegation fight. So yeah, it's interesting times at the moment, and yeah, fingers crossed the results keep going our way. I
With
feel
that
I need
league
to give you
table
the
on
right.
there, Ollie, I was just going to ask a question. On Tuesday, we've got Barrow v Harrogate, and I asked this question to my kids earlier. What do you want there? Do you want a draw, or do you want Barrow to beat Harrogate so they continue to struggle at the bottom? What's your take on it, folks?
Draw.
I want a draw. Yeah. But I do get
draw with lots
a
of
draw with a
sense,
Shrewsbury win, and we pull away from both of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just looking at that table, it's nice to see. Right, you're only showing the bottom half because that's in a bit relevant to us. Right at the top of the bottom half, Gillingham were just sneaking into view.
Yeah, I could
their
keep
old
them
friend
in on
Gareth.
purpose.
Yeah, it's nice to see that. I think target for Gareth, for Gav and the team. That's beating them. That's got to be the target. It's a big ask. They're on 41 points from 29, but you got to have stretch goals in life, and it'd be lovely to finish above him this season, wouldn't it?
Especially as they were top of the league table at one point. They've had a car crash mid-season. Picked up a few results at the moment, but yeah, they're really, really struggling. And it just shows you League 2 is a crazy division. You go in and get a few wins, like Tranmere could possibly get themselves into trouble as well. But yeah, a lot of teams. Apparently, there's 6 teams. Well, I can tell you there are 6 teams. There's 6 teams in League 2 with less than a point a game. And then in League 1, there's only 1 team. So yeah, the bottom of League 2 is particularly poor.
I don't think we're going to need many points to stay up in sort of historical perspective. And I think that's good because we're not going to get what you might need in other seasons.
No, we're not. Cool. We've covered a lot there. Any final comments before we close off?
Not really. Just let's see. Hope this continues, eh?
Yeah, so okay. So yeah, we've covered a lot of points. We're at nearly an hour and 10. Thanks everyone for listening. We'll be back again soon at some point. There'll still a lot of games in Feb. So yeah, thanks everyone for listening. And yeah, we're back again soon.
Cheers, Ollie.
Cheers, guys.
Lloyd working hard, working well. And Marcus is in! What a finish! What a start for Shrewsbury Town!